I know it's red.
Do
It
it.
says it's but when I you can't see it.
Take off.
Somebody called out.
Oh, sure, come on.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. Oh. It took me a minute.
Those you had a stick, you had a rod,
Yeah. I mean, I gotta use some feel to use that blade.
And it should be a lot easier.
Float the blade till you feel a bump, go into a cigarette.
We spread out now.
Skidder that won't have no stern wheels. You never have to back.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Which is easy now for picking up water.
Oh, yeah.
That's the work.
We line up in the morning, kind of get the service before we get out. Paper systems, who's taking a hand today. They're like, y'all please, and y'all two guys.
I have done it a big one. If you got a bulldozer that's moving a maid, it's making my half with bulldogs and the studs and the skidders.
Have a smooth
And it's smooth ride and go faster.
We save you some.
Not too bad. If it's 20 degrees of cold, it's always cool.
Yeah. What do you think so? All right. Try to warm it. I never went that far. I wasn't even my way got set on fire. Let's see, get going. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we had a slight delay. We're waiting for the town attorney. When he arrives, then we will get started. Just FYI, until I call the meeting to order, feel free to speak. Feel free to carry on a conversation with the person next to you. It's all right. However, we're still waiting for the town attorney.
get paid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Council, we'll be able to order go. Meeting come to order. Town of Lucama monthly meeting dated April 1st, 2024. First item on the agenda will be Chair recognizes Mr. Joe Stallings of Lucama Global Methodist Church for the opening prayer.
Matt, I have something to say first. I spoke to the town attorney about this, and we need to make sure we have some parameters around this when we start this prayer, because we have a diverse community here, and not everybody, has the same beliefs. So we can go forward with this tonight, but we really need to come up with some parameters on how the prayer is done and who's gonna say the prayer when we have this prayer for the meeting.
We'll discuss that,
Okay.
but Mr. Stallings, please.
Let's pray.
Mayor,
Yeah.
just to interject real quick, I just wanna point out that the agenda is up to the board to decide what goes on the agenda. And I see that the prayer is inserted before the approval of the agenda. It should be the other way around, so that the board can decide what goes on the agenda.
So are we disagreeing with an individual from our community that wishes us goodwill, praying to his God and praying, and is that what we're saying?
That's not what's debate. What's debating here is the agenda, what's on the agenda.
Is there, are you saying that we need to call the approval of the agenda first?
Yes, sir.
I understand. Oh, I apologize. Is there a motion on the floor for approval for the agenda?
Well, like I said, according to the attorney, we need to make sure we have some guidelines in
What is
place.
the guideline? What would be the guidelines, sir?
So I think, as I hope you're aware, prayer at a public meeting is not without legal implications. And if it's not dealt with appropriately, I'm not suggesting that anybody here, the gentleman who's here tonight would do it improperly, but if it's used to proselytize, or to create the impression that the town of Lucama prefers a particular religion above the other, or if it's not inclusive and discriminates in favor of a particular religion, then it can subject the town to legal liability for violating the separation of church and state. So most boards that have adopted a prayer as part of the it's legally permissible to allow prayer under specific guidelines, as have been stated by the Supreme Court. But there's also been prayer that has been struck down by the courts as being improper. Rowan County is an example in the state of North Carolina, when I went to the Fourth Circuit, and the court ended up striking that down because it was only members of the board who were allowed to give the prayer, who were given the prayer, and they were all a Christian faith. And so that was deemed to be too preferential to a particular religion and to exclude other viewpoints, other religions. So I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but
That
it
is not what's happening here.
It is my recommendation, though, that if the board does want to include prayer for a meeting, that it do so pursuant to guidelines, that it's adopted, that dictates how people are to be selected to give prayer before the meeting, and whom, and guidelines for the prayer itself to be, again, non-proselytizing and things of that nature.
Well, as stated, and I don't believe and I've made this clear to the board as well as to the public, this is open to all faiths as well. I have included that in to the board as well as my announcement as that it was included all faiths. It was actually in concordance with Greece versus Galloway, and it was also in concordance with Rowan County. So obviously that it is that. They are free, that the individual who is either volunteers or the individual who volunteers or does, or is invited, which that invitation has been extended to the entire town of all faiths, all religions, as long as they are in accordance with Greece versus Galloway, as long as, because I am not the person who's praying for it. The individual is asking their God, their deity, that they wish to recognize, and asking for merely us to, that deity to assist us in the town, in the issues that we're dealing with the town.
I think you're going down the right track in terms of what's appropriate in terms of the prayer policy, but if it were to be the policy of the town, the guidelines of the town, then that would need to be a resolution setting forth those guidelines as opposed to something informal, in my opinion.
Can we allow Mr. Stallings to give the prayer for this evening?
It's not up to me, that's up to the board.
Mr. Stallings has taken it. We can obviously discuss this later, and we can keep on, we can discuss this at a later date. But Mr. Stallings has taken the initiative to give us his time to ask a person of his faith to assist us tonight. And I don't believe there's nothing really wrong with that.
I don't see nothing wrong with it. I'd like to see a policy in place, make sure we got all the stuff covered. I don't see having wrong having a moment of silence first, even if we leave that moment of silence, if we get a policy in place for this.
Why don't we discuss that at a later date? I'm open to that, but like I said, Mr. Stallings has arrived, and he has taken his time out of his day.
I understand
To
that.
do
I'd
that.
make a motion, we do the policy in place first, and like I said, you can open it by a moment of silence.
What is the issue about a prayer? Why do we have
We
to?
don't have, the attorney said, when you get things in order, make sure everything's great.
But you're asking for a resolution for a moment of silence.
No,
Pray at your own will.
I ain't got nothing against it. I'm a church man for too, but I'll get a policy in place.
That's merely what I've stated tonight. Mr. Stallings has been invited. He did volunteer. Why don't we just allow him to do it tonight? Obviously, that we can suspend the further one and for more discussion. That's what I'm merely stating. That's such an issue. Why do we allow that?
I will say that so far, like I said, in terms of it being invited from the public, and without any particular, at best, I don't know what the background information was as to how Mr. Stallings was selected, and I'm assuming it was volunteered to do that. That means there's no preference given to a particular religion, and if that's the case, then I don't really see anything to be concerned about that, but I'm just saying it is my recommendation that in order, if the town wants to include this as part of its regular meetings, that it have policies in place to govern that.
So, I need to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. We as a board are telling an individual who wants to ask their deity, their God, we are telling them what to pray.
No.
What they can and cannot pray for.
There
Or
can
can
be-
and cannot say.
You should not be editorializing the prayers, but you are permitted to have guidelines that say that they should not use it to proselytize, to condemn other religions and things of that nature. Those are appropriate to be in a policy that discusses prayer.
I can understand that issue. I don't think Mr. Stallings is going to be doing that tonight, though. Mr. Stallings is merely going to be.
Again, I'm just talking about.
No, I understand. I understand. That's the reason I made a suggestion tonight. Why don't we allow Mr. Stallings to proceed? And then after that, we can discuss this issue in new business, if you'd like, or at next month's meeting, and we can deal with that. Would the board be open to that? May I proceed then?
Oh, no problem.
But
place properly. It needs to be put in place properly.
That's the reason why I merely stated, when we discussed this earlier, obviously, Mr. Stoneman is here, he's volunteer, and this will be.
Don't argue with me.
You know.
I replied to your email, told you what I thought. You replied back to me and told me what we were gonna do. We don't have anything in place, and
This
that's
is
what
a-
he's saying, we need to have a policy in place, so that it is all inclusive of all people. It's not about one person, it's not about you, me,
It
it's
already-
about all people,
It is in compliance with all people. It is.
not until we have a policy in place. Right?
How is that possible? I have already extended this off to everyone.
Without a policy in place.
You said you done it, but the board didn't do it without the policy.
And if I can speak, I told you, I had no problem with prayer, but not everybody may believe in the same thing.
I understand, but
And so, to me, like I suggested to you in my email to you, if we get a moment of silence, which I've seen in other meetings, that would give everybody the chance to do whatever they wanted to do in that moment of silence.
why is it any different from when the North Carolina legislature does it? They do the exact same thing that I suggested. And the United States Senate and the United States Congress does it. What is the difference? That I've done literally the exact same thing. What is the difference? But we want a moment of silence.
I'm going by what the lawyer said. We're trying to keep us from getting into a lawsuit where the town loses money.
It's legally permissible to have prayer before a meeting, so long as it follows certain guidelines, like I said. It's also can be violation for people's rights if you have prayer before a meeting and it's not pursuant to those guidelines. That's the legal advice. It's not that you can't have prayer, it just has to be under the right circumstances.
So are we asking Mr. Stallings to sit down? Yes or no?
I'm not offended either way. No problem.
Well, evidently, Mr. Stallings, the board has, right now has some issues with that, and unfortunately,
That's not correct. We
Well,
don't have issues.
I've asked the question, I have asked the question.
And it was stated by Commissioner Tilgate here, we don't have an issue with prayer. We just wanna make sure that we have everything the way it needs to be, so we can protect ourselves from a lawsuit. If that means, according to what the attorney is saying, we have a resolution that gives parameters for what can and cannot be done by who we invite to say a prayer, then it's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Stated, I'm more than willing to discuss that issue. What I need an issue, what my issue is with it right now is at this direct moment in time, are we going to allow Mr. Stallings to give his prayer or not?
We don't have the parameters in
So
place.
then no.
I
That's,
think, just to interject, I think there should be a vote on whether to approve the agenda with the prayer or to approve the agenda without the prayer. That's what should be up for discussion.
is there a motion on what council is suggesting? With the prayer? Is there a motion on the floor for the approval of the agenda without the prayer?
Motion.
Motion second. All in favor by saying aye. Opposed? Mr. Stallings, we appreciate you volunteering. The board has overruled this at this time. Thank you for your time,
You're welcome.
and we hope that when something is been put in place that's for the board's approval, that we can ask you, that you would volunteer.
No problem.
Thank you, sir.
Y'all have a good evening.
Thanks, sir.
Is there a motion on the floor for the approval of minutes and financial report for both, for March 4th and 7th?
voting on both at one time?
Yes, for, meeting, town board meetings, minutes for March 4th and 7th. I have in my packet.
I made a motion.
So-
Yes.
All in favor by saying aye? All opposed? Motion carries. Alright. Moving on, next into our agenda, Chair recognizes Ms. Dana Lane, in reference to giving the 2021 audit report for this.
Ideally, I'd like to stand by the laptop so I can control my own PowerPoint. Is that okay?
Please. Sure.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me back. And I will briefly go through the financials. Now, I did not bring a full audit report today, mainly because it only got uplifted to the LGC Friday. And until they approve, I do not like to print and bind the financial statements until the LGC approves that audit. They've been a little tricky to deal with lately with all their changes. So I'm gonna just go through these briefly, my responsibility, go over the financial statements that are in your PowerPoint with, highlight just a few things from there, and really concentrate on the findings and your responsibilities as the board to follow up on those findings and some suggestions from there, okay? Because of the timeliness, a lot of these numbers really don't have a lot of value when we're this old for an audit. So of course, my responsibilities is to issue an opinion, and I'm happy to say we do have an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that I can give as an auditor. That means that the statements and those numbers that you will see in the audit are fairly represented for the town of Lucama, okay? We can issue several levels. As a matter of fact, the first financial statements that I did issue, 19s, were an adverse opinion, which means I could not give full assurance on the statements that we presented. But the statements are a fair representation of the town for 6/30/21. Our responsibilities as auditors is to issue that opinion. We use various audit evidence, financials like bank statements, investment statements. The LGC provides us with confirmations. The Department of Revenue provides us with, here's how much sales tax we gave them for the year. Here's the PAL bill receipts you received for the year. And different forms of numbers that I can tie to those financial statements and say, okay, this is what was given, and so those numbers should tie exactly. So I get audit evidence that way. And we also have to evaluate supplementary information. That type of information is like the Elgers retirement numbers, tax receivables, and your tax roll numbers and things like that. And that's the other type of information that's in those audit results. When you get the full financial statements, there's something called the management discussion and analysis. That's the only place you'll see comparative figures. It talks about the budget. It tells you how these statements flow together that are really kind of a, governmental financial statements are really kind of complicated. The ones that provide you value are the ones that I put in these statements, okay? And when we get to maybe 6/30/23, I'll spend more time on the financial statements because it's really important as a board that you learn to understand how these statements work, how they work together, and what numbers are the valuable numbers to you for your financial making decisions, okay? And we'll go into a little bit more of that in a few minutes, especially when we get to some of the findings. So the exhibit I brought out, Exhibit 3. This is your balance sheet. And that's the balance sheet of your governmental funds, okay? And Exhibit 3 here shows you your assets, your liabilities, and what's known as fund balance, okay? The example I always give is your home. Your home is your asset. It might be worth $200,000. Your liability is the debt payment on that. Maybe you owe $150,000 on your home, okay? And then that fund balance would be your equity, and that's your what's that? What do you, if you paid off your debt, what would you have left over? That's your fund balance or your equity in it. And so as you can see with the town of Lucama for 6/30/21, it had total assets. And these are current assets, your current reserves, because a governmental fund operates in the near future. What are you going to have in the next year to operate? That's how you budget, and that's how you should plan, is what are you gonna use in the near future. And so these are your assets for the near future in '21. And that was $1.5 million. You had some liabilities, some deferred inflows that has to do with your property taxes and some prepaid taxes, and then you had your fund balance of about $1.5 million. But like I said, these are really old numbers. They don't really have a whole lot of value to you. So I skipped Exhibit 4. It's the same exact statement as Exhibit 5. The only difference is Exhibit 5 shows you your comparison to budget, okay? And budget's important. You are required by law to operate in a budget, okay? And Exhibit 5 is that general fund, again, governmental funds, that's taxes, things like that, grants, okay? And you have to have an original budget and a final budget. Guess what? No budget amendments were made for the year, for '21. And so the original budget and the final budget are identical on these statements. That is not what's expected to see. And as you can see, the budget was severely overspent for '21. That will be a finding when we get further on into our financial statements. So you had your revenues exceeded your budget and your expenditures exceeded the budget that was planned for '21. Okay, Exhibit 6. Now, proprietary funds, those are your business type funds. And I know I'm going through this fast, but again, I need to spend more time on your findings, and this doesn't present a whole lot of value. So, proprietary funds are your business type funds, okay? During the year, you operate on that near term, but at the end of the year, we present what's called full accrual, every asset and every liability on your statements. And that's what Exhibit 6 operates. You have two business type funds. You have the electric fund and you have the water and sewer fund, and those are your two business. Each of those funds stand alone, and they are to operate alone. You can't take your electric fund and transfer the money out to run your general fund. Can't take general fund money and send it over to the water fund and run it. They each have to operate alone, and they are expected to earn a profit, and they're expected to earn a profit to run as a business. No different than if somebody came in, Duke Progress Energy, if they came in to operate, they would be operating for a profit. You're supposed to operate for a profit for both of those entities, okay? So as you can see when you look at it, your assets for the electric fund were about $7.8 million. You had some liabilities of about $350,000, and you have equity of about $7.6 million. That's large. A lot of it has to do with those, some of your assets and things like that. But again, electric funds make money strong in cash, okay? Then you can see in your water fund, much lower. You had about $2 million in assets. You have about $1 million in liabilities and about $1 million in equity on your water fund. So then we'll go to the next statement, and this is your basically your profit and loss. Where did you fall during the year for the profit and loss in '21? Your electric fund had about $2.3 million in revenues. You had expenses of about $1.7 million, having operating income of about $600,000. A few other little revenues there, ending the year at $630,000 in income. Okay, so the electric fund's not an issue. Your water fund, though, as you can see, you had about $430,000 in revenues, $730,000 in expenses, creating an operating loss, therefore not supporting itself, some interest expense to pay down debt, a little bit of a grant of $68,000, creating an overall loss of about $250,000 for the '21 fiscal year. Okay? So we flew through those statements. There are full note disclosures that when you get the statements, you can read about this. Tells you more detailed information about your assets, your liabilities, your fund balance, and things like that, as you can see from this PowerPoint. And I expect the LGC probably to approve the statements within the next week. So that should be good. All right, so this is the reports that I issue in connection with your audit. So first, because you receive governmental funding, we issue a report on internal controls, okay? And you had several findings that we issued. One is the statutory violations, and this had several statutory violations. One, the 21-22 budget was late for adoption. Budgets are required to be adopted before June 30th. This budget was not adopted until July, so it was adopted after the fiscal year end. So therefore, that is a statutory violation in the state of North Carolina. I had already mentioned that you had no budget amendments for the 20 and 21 fiscal year, and then also that expenditures exceeded budget. So all three of those are statutory violations. Now, the management that's currently here, they weren't here during that time, so we can't really point fingers on that. It's more to keep you informed and to make sure you work to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future is the key here. You also, a timely audit is required by state statute. And we do have a goal to try to get 2 more audits done during the summer. And it is up to having a timely trial balance delivered to me. Ideally, I'd like to see 22's numbers by the end of April so that I could do 22 in the month of May and then get 23 done in July, and then we would be on track to do 24. But again, that is not up to me. It's up to management. Next, I want to talk about segregation of duties. This is a repeat finding. And segregation of duties, some people think, oh, well, we're just going to accept that because we're always going to have it. Segregation of duties can go away. You can go hire people, you can get board involvement to make segregation of duties go away, and it's vital. You can't have, as Jimmy starts backing out, and he should back out, your staff should stand on their own. You should have somebody like Jimmy coming in once a month for 2 or 3 hours to look over their shoulders, and that should be it, okay? So as their staff stands on alone, it's too much work for 2 people to do. And somebody should be also separating those duties. And good segregation of duties has 1 person in charge of revenues, 1 person in charge of expenses, and a 3rd person in charge of reconciliation. Well, you got 2, so where's the 3rd coming from? Okay? So you really need to concentrate on that segregation of duties and think about it, because that's the ideal formula to have good segregation of duties, unless the board wants to really get involved and have a whole lot more functions, because I've seen that happen too. But you'd have to commit to a whole lot of hours every week to come work here for free. But you have good cash, so there's no reason you shouldn't hire a 3rd person to make those responsibilities take place and have good segregation of duties. The 3rd one was, again, that trial balance non-existent. That was due to software issues. The software was not being used. I think 22 is now, my understanding, most of it all has been keyed and was being used the way it should be used. And so therefore, my expectation is 22's trial balance should be turned around faster. And then this is a new one, a prior period adjustment. There was 2 main things. One, and I'm going to read it from, this is just a summarized version. I'm going to read it from my actual finding. This one is kind of a non-negotiable for me. Mr. Overton and I don't agree with how the trial balance should be set up, but it is state statute also for a town should operate on the modified accrual basis of the county, okay? And that is state statute. And the transactions in the general fund are not meeting that basis of accounting. And so therefore, the software's fund balance should reconcile to the prior year audited financial statements, okay? So the general fund should match 6/30/21 for fund balance. Proprietary funds should operate during the year on the modified accrual. Then at the end of the year, you record the entries to convert it to full accrual. If you want your full accrual items on your books, you use a Fund 19 or a Fund 99. You don't use Fund 10, and you put full accrual items. And when I say full accrual, it's things like Elgers, fixed assets, okay, compensated absences. Those kind of items do not get booked in the general fund because you are not expected to pay those in the next year. So therefore, you don't record them on your books. The trial balance I received at 6/30/21 did not tie, the fund balance did not tie to the 6/30/20 audit. And so I did not have a fund balance that tied. So therefore, we had a prior period adjustment that I did not expect to have. And in my firm, where I used a person not involved in an audit team to write the statement, he had to spend about 5 hours trying to find the mistakes to the fund balance because of a journal entry that was made. So I will not accept a trial balance for 6/30/22 if it does not tie to the prior year trial balance or financial statements. Okay?
And when you give us the packet, it'll have all this stated.
Yep, it's in writing in it.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay? And I've gone over it. I visited about 2 weeks ago. I went over it with management. Okay? So they're aware of it. Just because it makes it very difficult to do an audit when the numbers don't tie to the prior year audit. And they should. Fund balance should match to the penny. So that's kind of going to be a non-negotiable for me for the next trial balance. And I knew 6/30/21 didn't match, but we wanted to move it forward. But then my guy had to spend about 5 hours time to get everything to reconcile back. Okay? And it's not the auditor's responsibility. So, okay? Anyways. We also issue some other reports. These are basically by my profession. One is a communication of significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. I normally wouldn't issue this report if we issue a yellow book audit, which we did, but we also are recommending a capital asset policy, which I've reviewed with Mr. Clark. It's a good policy to have. It guides management on what dollar amount is going to be a capital asset, what's going to be a fixed asset, what's going to be considered a repair and maintenance. Especially as you guys are getting into these as we get these audits caught up and you get the funding for these water projects, it is imperative that the staff knows what is going to be a fixed asset and what is just a repair and maintenance cost. And that capital asset policy will be there. That is the law to guide them so that when we audit, we know whether this was supposed to be a repair and maintenance or whether it's supposed to be a capital asset, and then there's no confusion. Well, maybe, or maybe, or maybe, okay? So this dictates the way it goes. So I went ahead and issued that report mainly so I could put the capital asset policy in writing. We also do a communication to those charged with governance. So there was no changes in accounting policies, and that doesn't mean accounting policies at your level. It means accounting policies in financial statement level, okay? That there are estimates in the audit, depreciation's an estimate, allowances for bad debt, things like that are estimates. The staff was great to work with. Of course, there are some difficulties, like we need to accelerate this, we need to move fast. As soon as I get a trial balance, I try to turn it around as fast as I can. There are corrected misstatements, meaning we had journal entries, and of course no disagreements with management. Now, here's another one. So not only do you have to respond to the LGC about those 4 findings, they started something called these performance indicators of concern. And we fill out this thing called this data input workbook, and it produces these charts and things that are bright pink, and if they're bright pink, you have to respond to the LGC. So it says your general fund balance available. It's an important reserve for local governments to provide cash flow during periods of declining revenues, okay? And that a unit of this size should be from 71 to 132%. And the reason this is an important reserve is because think about property taxes. Property taxes get paid, like a lot of it gets paid around the beginning of the year. You know, it goes like this. And so your money comes in like this, or grants come in like this. Your money don't come in like this for the general fund. And so you have to keep reserves on hand to get you through those periods when not a lot of money comes in. And that's why the LGC wants a good reserve, which it's down a little bit, but it's okay. You're still well above the guideline of 71 to 132%.
Is there a recommended reserve amount that we're supposed to be?
Well, that's the fund balance, which is between 71 and 132%, and you're at 191%. And it goes from that exhibit 3 number, this exhibit 3 number, this $981,000, you're at 191%. So you're good right now.
So, quick question,
Uh-huh.
you've got 2019, 2020, 2021 here, and it looks like it's going down.
Yeah, but I don't know how good
That's what I was
19
gonna
is.
say, this is deceiving though, correct?
Yes.
Because we don't know the actual.
We don't know 19 is good because I issued an adverse opinion that year.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
I feel good about 20.
Okay,
Okay, so hopefully 22 might be better up.
okay.
Okay, but I wouldn't trust the blue.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust the blue. Okay, so then the water sewer fund, you have what's called a quick ratio. Quick ratio says that you should have, it should be more than 1. And 1 means your assets and your current assets and your current liabilities should be, when you divide the 2, it should be greater than 1. And that means you should have more cash and receivables than you have current liabilities or payables that are due in the next several months. And that means you have more than 1. And it is. Again, don't know how good the blue is in 19, but I already showed you that the water sewer fund has operating issues, and I'll show you that in the next slide. And so these are the 3 other things they look at for the water sewer fund, and this is the LGCs dictating these things. First, operating net income, which adjusts for depreciation and your debt payment, and it says a negative balance indicates that your rates are not covering your operating expenses. And then your unrestricted cash and expense ratio calculates how many months worth of expenses a unit can pay based on the amount of unrestricted cash on hand at the end of the year. They want at least 2 months worth. And then a question about transfers in, because you're not supposed to transfer money in to support operations. And as you can see right there, your operating net income has been a loss 3 years in a row. I feel good about 20 and 21, don't know about 19. 19's just, we knew for a fact that 19, that was that adverse opinion. So your revenues are not covering your operating costs in the water sewer. And that is a number that they are, the LGC, they want a response. That's one of the things you have to respond to the LGC about, because it's pink. You have to tell them, what are you going to do as a board to start turning that figure around? You know, it is several years old, but they're going to look at your trend and say it's been this way for years. And so they're going to want to know, what are you doing to turn it around? Okay, the electric fund has the same exact ratios. Your electric fund's strong right there. So, and again, same net income, whatever. You've got good reserves. You don't have an issue in the electric fund. Okay, and then these are the other performance indicators that you have to respond to. Okay? And I gave it to you this way so you could start working on this letter, because you only have 2 months to get the letter completed and signed by everybody on the board. And it gets uploaded through the LGC. Okay, we've got the late audit, that's one of them. The budgeted tax levy had more than 3% uncollected. And what it meant was the budget wasn't amended. And so if collections were down or whatever, nobody adjusted the budget for what you were actually collecting. And so therefore your ratio was more than 3% off. You didn't have a pre-audit. Again, you overspent. So what are you doing to fix the budget in the future? Are you on the UAL? Yes, you're on the UAL. And so, yeah, those are it. So you have to respond to the 4 that are on that other page, those 4 concerns. What are you going to do about your late audit? And then your budget concerns. So you basically have 6 things you have to write a letter to the LGC to tell them what are you going to do in the future. and you have till May 31st to send it through the electronic portal to the LGC, and that's got to be signed by the board members on that. And I went through it fast, but the numbers are old, but the performance indicators of concern hopefully are better, but it's hard to say when I'm looking at stuff that are 3 years old. I feel confident with, a little more confident with 24. I don't know about 23 and back, so I can't say how that's gonna look until we get into it. Oh, we only got 2 to do, 22, 23, and I feel pretty good about 24. Right, Mr. Clark?
Look at him.
You're good, because I've had conversations with you, so I feel good about you. So,
Are there any additional questions or?
and my contact's on the last page. Feel free. I'm at my desk every day this week.
Are there any additional questions for Ms. Slade?
So what can we as a board do to make sure that we're on top of this? I mean,
I know you're getting financial reports. I haven't seen what they look like because, I don't look forward that much. I read board minutes, but I don't really look forward at the numbers yet because they don't mean anything to me at this point. But make sure you're looking at budget compared to actual, because that's your responsibility. Make sure, they have software, and I don't know how strict that software is, if it allows them to overspend. Yeah, it does. I can see right there. I can see right here it does.
There's amendments for that too.
There's a what?
Amendments. For
Okay,
that.
all right, so some softwares that are price prohibitive for a town this size don't even allow you. You wouldn't be able to make a payment, okay, and it wouldn't let you do that. But I saw one thing right away that said that they had overspent, but they said they've got amendments to fix it. So that's huge. That'll get rid of a lot of your things. You really need to consider the segregation of duties. That's a small town. A lot of your problems that started this chain of events came from you had nobody. You had 1 or 1.5 employees in the.
and when you say 3 people, you mean these 2 and an administrator?
I don't look at the administrator as being in
So
the
we
financial
need
process.
3 people and an
an
administrator. Okay.
Ideal would be ideal.
Okay.
And so segregation of duties, those would be the 2 that I think would get you the biggest bang for your buck. You as the board member looking at your budget and making sure that budget, and then segregation of duties, fixing those. These little things I think are gonna self-fix when you get to a good year. I'm just scaring you into getting it fixed now, so that by the time we get to the end of this year, we got a good one. So that I can stand up here and say, hey, it's been good. We don't have anything we have to report.
And then
These are hard. These are hard to stand up here and present.
And then the next budget has to be done by June 30th of this
It
year.
has to be adopted by June 30th.
So
Not
when-
done. You got to write it in May.
When is okay, so we need to for sure be working on it by May.
He is. He is. Because we've already had a conversation about it. So, but you have to adopt it before June 30th.
Don't worry, I'll
Right?
call him 1,000 times the rest of the week.
Am I stealing your thunder?
No, but it's okay. I'll give it to them later and they'll say, oh, you're really on it.
That's right. He's on the ball.
15
Don't worry.
minutes and you're fixed.
Are there any other additional questions? Ms. Lane, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Now moving on to the comment section. Public comment. Chair recognizes Ms. Gladys Martinez of 106. 106 or 109? 106 Boulder Drive.
Can I just stay right here?
You be please.
Okay, yes, ma'am, and you speak, my name is Gladys Martinez. I come here to talk about something else, but my agenda changed. I want to talk to you about that prayer. I've been coming here a long time, and before they was doing the prayer, what happened to the bylaws for the last time y'all was doing the prayer? Did y'all have a bylaw then? Or did you not? You know, and so all of a sudden, the prayer stops. They stop praying. What did the board do? Did they vote out the prayer? Or was there a bylaw? Can you find it? You might can't find it. Cause it might be buried with all them documents that were dug up. You know, and so that's why I just said that prayer is the key thing to keep this place together, to keep us together. You know, and so, and I just feel like that you should have respected that person and let him do the prayer. None of y'all, I feel like in my heart that everything that Mayor Creech gonna bring before the board, y'all gonna question it, and y'all not gonna vote on it. And then you're gonna go down for that reason. Because prayer used to be here. What happened to the pledge of allegiance to the flag? You don't do that anymore. Was there a bylaw then? Did they have documents then? Can you pull it up? I say in my spirit, no, because it's gone. Y'all got rid of it. Now you want to revote it. I suggest you should revote it and put it back in. Because that was wrong what y'all did tonight. And I didn't totally agree to it. You know, and so, you let me know with my 3 minutes up. I didn't come to talk about that. I had another agenda because I have the concern of the young people in this neighborhood. You know, I'm going to bring that on the next board meeting whenever I come back in town. But what y'all did tonight was totally wrong. Totally wrong. And I feel that everybody in here was against it. You know, I want to see the other document. Because prayer was here before any of y'all came here. One person, when I was coming to the meeting, one nobody here but Commissioner David Johnson. His son wasn't even here. And they did prayer.
1 minute.
Okay, so that's what I want to know. Where the documented then? Where is it? In my mind, and I feel in my heart, that it's in that backwoods with all them other papers that were dug up. And that was illegal. So that was wrong what y'all did tonight. He took out his time to come here, and y'all wouldn't even vote on it. You could have voted on it, but you chose not to. And for that reason, you're going to suffer for that. Thank you.
Moving on to old business. This is going to be in reference to the website. I'm going to defer this amount to Ms. Owens in reference because she's been dealing with this for a while. Ms. Owens.
I sent this information to you all by email. These were some questions that you all were asking at the last meeting. And specifically, if someone is trained here in the office to do the changing of or adding of minutes and things like that, they were trained to do so. There would be a $350 cost for that. And then you asked what the cost would be monthly. And the cost monthly is going to be $75. So it's a $350. It's $350 plus then it says here $75 monthly.
So the $350 is to train, for example, you to do the meeting minutes and that, and then if we have to change something major on the thing, that's what the $75 per month is going to.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Yeah.
The next information was if they made all the updates and did everything. And she said if that was something that you all wanted to do, they could cater it to our needs, but that they would need to call to discuss what that payment plan would be. So I want to bring this to you first to find out if you wanted them to train someone in the office to do the uploading.
So she didn't indicate whether or not it would be about the same cost, more or less, or.
She didn't indicate, no.
When I talked to her the other day, what she said was this: it'll take like if we have to have her upload the meeting minutes or an emergency thing down in the little block, that's going to take more time than if we get Dina trained.
Right.
And she can put the meeting minutes or an emergency, you know, oh my gosh, the electricity's out all over town, everybody just, you know, we're working on it, whatever. If she does that and then the main like, you know.
Anytime something changes.
Yes,
okay.
she would do it so it's done, you know, she can do all the coding and everything for her. I don't think we need to do that.
Okay. I see what
Anyway,
you're saying, so it's a matter of whether or not, she can download minutes
yes,
on the, or download it, whatever.
Right.
Add the
Any
minutes
events
and
and
events
things
to
like
the website, and that would basically double difference.
In reference to this, is the website ready to be published? Has all of the corrections, what all of the board has expressed, been corrected?
There was a couple things that she was working on
mhm.
Okay.
that has not been completed yet, that I don't look at. It's
Were
possible.
there any additional
But-
ones that needed to be corrected after that? Or
When I looked at it, the majority of it, except for like what Dina said, except for the couple of things, it looked like it was good. I mean, she'll have a time to have to go back and catch up all the meeting minutes, but, it looked real good, yeah, yeah.
Could I make a suggestion in that we could put this up for a vote? Obviously, the website has been delayed so long. Could we go ahead and vote now that when these corrections have been completed, that Dina has authorization to go ahead and publish this website and go ahead and put it up?
If Dina has had her training at that time.
Understand about that.
She'd have to have her training.
Yeah.
before.
Once all, because this is now,
Yeah.
this has been brought up at least I
Right.
think three times now. We go ahead and make an approval when everything is in place. Dina has authorization to go ahead and, once she receives her training, and go ahead and publish this website. 'Cause
Absolutely.
It needs to go ahead and go.
It does, cause I got a call last night, wanting to know they need to put their trash out.
What?
So, see, that could've gone on the website, cause they don't have Facebook, so there you go.
Okay.
Is there a motion on the floor for my suggestion then?
Okay.
This will be strictly for once Dina receives her training, and once the corrections that Dina has spoke of are completed, that the website can be published.
I make a motion that when Dina has been properly trained and the corrections have been made as requested, that the website can go public.
I'll say that motion.
Seconded, all in favor by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Is there any additional information?
May I just,
Do you want to set eyes to go through?
that would be fine. I understand y'all want me to have the training, but I think we need to go ahead and make a motion, if I understand correctly, to choose this, that you train me for $350 and then it's $75 a month. I think
Okay.
that probably is something that needs to be, a motion. Yes, I think it needs to be separate.
I make a motion that we train Dina for the $350, and we also pay the $75 a month for, I don't know the name of the company, the solutions, whatever, that, for them to take care of the major things that we need updated on the website. I make a motion.
Ms. Joyner, I'm sorry, Commissioner Joyner's, motion, is the motion seconded?
Second.
Well, motion is seconded, is all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Very well. Is there any additional information? Moving on to new business, this is gonna be in reference to, Commissioner Best's resignation acceptance. Chair recognizes, interim town administrator, Mr. Ralph Clark.
I received along with you all a letter from Mr. Michael Best. It says, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from my position as commissioner with the town of Blue Common. My last day will be March 6, 2024. It's been a pleasure to work with Dana and Ashley on different events and activities. Sincerely, Michael Best.
Is there a motion on the floor to accept this resignation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor by saying aye. Opposed? Well, motion carries. Moving on to budget amendments 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Mayor, if I may just briefly, since there's now a vacancy in the board, address the replacement process.
We can. Chair recognizes you, Council.
Yeah, I just wanted to just reiterate the process, if there was any questions, if there's a vacancy in the board, the board, makes a decision to, fill that vacancy. And the same rules as was discussed last time, pretty recently, there was a vacancy, same rules apply. It has to be someone who is, eligible to be on the board, first of all, but that's the only condition. So it can be anybody, so long as they're a resident of the town, otherwise eligible to hold office. And, there's two different ways of going about, filling the role, the position. There's and that sort of gets into the weeds, but there's you can do it just by simple motion, or you can do it by nomination method if there's multiple persons who are interested in the position. You can, pass out basically ballots where each person nominates the person that they're interested in, and then you tally the nominations versus doing like, I make a motion for blank to fill the vacancy. You can look at different sources of persons who you think might be interested, including people who ran the last election, as possibilities, or anybody, who shows interest. You can open up, on your website if it gets published, calling for any interested persons to, indicate their interest for the position by mailing a letter or coming by and dropping off a statement of interest or something like that. So that's just the legalities of it. I just wanted to go over that, so in case there was any questions. There's no set time to fill a vacancy, but certainly state law would the expectation would be that if you have 5 positions that you wouldn't just allow one to remain vacant for a long period of time. Anybody who's nominated by the board to fill the vacancy would only serve for the remainder of Commissioner Best's term. Then the next election would be up to election. So that's all. I just wanted to kind of go over that again.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, recognize.
What I'd like to understand is if we have, when you said there might be multiple people that are interested, how's that handled?
Right, so it's still, again, if you have multiple people, just say you have a list with 5 names on it, right? Then the process is still those 2 options. You can have just a plain motion and a vote, or you can do the ballot method. It would be preferable for you first to vote on the method you're gonna use first, clear that hurdle, and then do one or the other. With the motion one, if you have 5 names, any commissioner could just say, I make a motion that so-and-so, just blank, John Doe, fill the vacancy. And then that goes for a vote, and if it's the majority vote, that person fills the vacancy. Or if that motion fails for lack of majority, and somebody else, the floor is open for somebody else to make a motion. That follows that pretty normal motion and vote that we're used to. The ballot method is you take the 5 names and then everybody puts the name of the candidate they're choosing on it, and then the totals are tallied up, and then the board would also have to agree, if they chose to go with the ballot method, on a mechanism if there's no clear majority of persons in favor of one candidate, that the lowest vote getters be dropped off in some way, so that you can kind of narrow the list until you get to the majority. Yeah.
What I want to clarify here is, I think you said, exactly how you said, if we have a list of people that, that have asked or would ask or, would be interested, say you have those 5 names, and out of that 5 names, say if someone asked him, to please recommend him, she doesn't want to recommend that person. How does that work?
It wouldn't be a person who's on your slate of candidates,
So
right?
if they would have, okay.
Yeah. It's up to the board, so
Right.
if any, and you can also vote on a process to have that slate of candidates presented, right? So that's another option. You can say, this is our process, and that way there's not so many gatekeepers.
Well, let's say I've had, I have 2 or 3 people ask me, or say they would be interested. Would any one of us have to recommend all 3 of those people, or
No.
not, or ever,
Not unless the board chose that, indicated that was the process, that you had submitting persons who
Okay.
indicated their interest.
So it depends on how it is, what process is, whether or not it's just nominate and vote, or whether it's, what you just said.
Yeah, and so just the rationale behind that is if the commissioner to whom a person said, I want to, I want to be considered, well, if that commissioner doesn't want that person, then they don't have to present them. I mean, that's sort of the,
Right.
Again, because it's up to the board, but if that person came and said, and delivered a letter to the town administrator and said, I want to be considered, then you guys, when you picked your slate of candidates, could first choose who the slate of candidates is, and if, you could even do that by majority vote, so you have to get people on the list via majority vote. If they can't get on the list, there's not a majority of the board that wants those persons on the list, then clearly they're not gonna be getting majority support to fill the vacancy.
Any other additional questions?
Yeah,
In some places I've been, when you had a vacancy, the board announced a vacancy and asked for those interested to respond in writing, their interest in it, and maybe a little bit about why they're interested in it. And that keeps you from having to be face-to-face, just have them all submit a letter of interest, or just a note of interest. So you would start beginning to get a slate. And that's worked pretty well to give you at least some people to talk about in some way to start that list if you wanted to do a ballot kind of sort of thing. But there are a number of ways to do this.
Would an announcement, would the board be opposed to like an announcement via Facebook or, ad on a marquee or something of that nature where we can actually have individuals, where we can actually have a discussion concerning this vacancy? Would the board be opposed to that? Or reach out, or even submit a number of candidates that they may have in mind or have been approached by?
I'll make a motion to the motion process.
To the what?
The motion process.
And that would be which form? The motion process? Commissioner Johnson has made a motion for a motion process. Is there a second?
Second.
Well, all in favor by saying aye. All opposed? No opposed. All right, motion carries. Is discussion continuing on, or do we need to move on?
So you mentioned putting it out there and asking people to say they were interested.
This is happening
Right, but what you're saying is you get the names and then they come to the commissioners to discuss, and do we discuss that in an open meeting? How does all that?
You could do a whole lot of ways. You could even go through an interview process if you wanted to.
Okay.
But I think that, the biggest thing is finding if there's some interest out there, and why are you interested, and what will you offer as a commissioner?
Is all that done in an open meeting or a closed session, or because it's?
I don't think you could do it at close.
You have to be open.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, you're asking people to come in and,
Well, I mean,
But
or you would do that.
still, you still have some closures, because in fact, if you decided to put them on a ballot, a paper ballot, and, each one you just kind of decide who you want on the list. So you could do it, in some ways that if you didn't, want to be open with it, because some of them may be your friend, and you say, well, I think this may be a good fit. And I hate to tell them, but,
I
if
think
you,
that's smart.
That's right, that's right.
if you do a ballot, let's all four, you vote against it, we want to know who voted for or against.
This is,
And it's not being secretive, it's just, a way to narrow the process down. I think, your attorney and I, if you decided you wanna do it some kind of way, we could probably help you formulate some guidelines. Or you come back at the next meeting and say, okay, here's some guidelines that you can do. And you could actually go ahead and start your, well, request to get people's names submitted. It would be nothing wrong with starting that, and we could, you know, help you develop something to help you sort them out and figure out, it's your decision, but we could help you at least to look at the whole list and decide, you could decide then who you wanted and who you didn't.
It would definitely make, in my opinion, it would definitely make the town feel like they're involved as well. If, obviously, the board has the ability to decide, but then it would also, by reaching out to the public and saying, hey, would you be interested in serving as town leader, that would definitely make the town feel good, in my opinion, because they're involved as well.
My opinion too.
But there again, I think the attorney now is saying, we're not part of this process, but we will help you through it if you like, and if you like some ideas, we'll share those.
My only question was if, for the people that have probably, well, I'll just say it, the people that approached me, you know, am I obligated to put their name out there or not put their name out there, or?
On that, I would just say,
I mean, this has been swirling around for a month. I mean, let's just put it all out there. This has been swirling around for a month, and everybody knew this thing was coming. And, you know, I've had people contact me, and I'm sure everybody else has too. I don't wanna say whether or not I think they're qualified. I don't want it to fall on my shoulders, you know, if,
what I think he's suggesting is you can kind of take that off your shoulders, is if you have a formal process for them to submit directly to one location, a written indication of their desire to be considered. That's the method. It wouldn't necessarily foreclose board members from saying, hey, I want to add a name to the list, but you have a method where it's, you know, nobody's shut out just because you guys are all making decisions about who you want to add to the list on the, you know.
So we could do that, come up with a list and then do the ballot thing where we come up with this number of people.
Let me say this, I know you've already decided on the method, you can change your mind, you can change, I mean, there's no reason you can't change back to the other method if you want to. The School of Government does recommend that the ballot method is a better approach. And the scenario that they give is, what if you got 3 candidates and one person, say, makes a motion to, go with the motion method, motion to select candidate A. Well, just take me for example, Commissioner Joyner says, well, I don't really like A as good as I like B, but I really don't like C.
right.
Okay? So do you vote for A, not knowing whether you're gonna get a chance to nominate your favorite B, and potentially get stuck with C if C's the one that goes. So you can act, it requires a little bit of strategy and gamesmanship that you wish you didn't have to do if it was the ballot method.
Right.
Because then you can just put the ones that you want, and then you don't have to decide whether or not to vote for somebody that you're sort of.
Anyone that's asked me, I don't want them to think, I don't want my opinion to govern whether or not they're put on or given a chance. I don't wanna make that decision, say, well, I don't like you, I'm not gonna bring your name up. I don't wanna be in that position. Or, and not that I don't like you, it's just, I don't think, you know.
You're right for the.
Yeah, I don't think you're right for that, and I don't wanna put your name out. I don't think it should be, that's why I was asking, you know, the people that have approached any of us, you know, what is our responsibility there?
And
there again.
Right, yeah, and I think he pretty well laid out the process and the way to go about this in a way that doesn't lead to bruised feelings, but ultimately it's the board's choice. So
Right.
even if you wanted somebody to be to fill the role, it might not be the will of the board.
Right.
So,
That answered my question. Thank you.
mm.
Is there any other discussion on the matter? Mandates, one more.
Do you wanna go ahead and make a motion, or could you get somebody to fill that seat? Fill, full?
I was just about to speak. I was gonna make this suggestion. Why don't, obviously that, I don't know if Commissioner Johnson has a person in mind right now or not. What I was gonna suggest is that, why don't we table this matter? We've already had 4 for the last month anyway. Why don't we table this matter and have a number of candidates that we can present to the board next month? And obviously that we can all vote on by the method or by Commissioner Johnson's motion and do it that way. And then we have a number of candidates that we can entertain the issue with. I'd like to know who some of these candidates are anyway that have been approached.
Can we, does it have to wait till the next meeting? I mean, as far as the names, I mean, cause I don't want this to turn into a campaign. And I don't know any other way to put it. I know there have people that have, come forward and said that they would be interested. But I don't want this to turn into another campaign again. We've, we've,
There's no set time limits.
Yeah.
So like, if we would say within the next week or within a week or whatever, and just get this over with. I mean, I'm not trying to prolong anything, but at the same time, I didn't want to.
Can I help you a little bit with that? I'm gonna be asking later about, I'll give you a report on your manager's position, the administrative position, and I've set up April 15th deadline that you're gonna start reviewing, just what I've said. So if you wanted to have a meeting somewhere around mid-April, we could make that work, somewhere the days that work with you all, to review those applicants, and then address that as part of the same meeting.
There would be a suitable timeline, in my opinion.
That gives you, that's
I really don't want to drag it out that far.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
What's the date, 15th?
Today is
What's the date,
the,
15th?
You know, I just kind of said the 15th, I'm not sure what day the 15th falls on.
It's only a 2-week period.
Yeah.
It's the 15th.
I really don't want to drag it that long. A week. I prefer a week. That's
It's
just
okay
me.
with you?
What about a compromise, let's say 10 days? Would 10 days be sufficient?
I said I prefer a week. I don't know what everybody else prefers. I said a week.
Yeah. You could make it all happen in a week, it's just, get the word out and say, okay, if you're interested, submit something to attorney or me or whomever you want, or a neutral party or whatever you want.
I don't know who's approached anybody else, that's the thing. I know who's approached me, I don't know who's approached anybody
Yeah.
else. I don't wanna make a decision based on just what I've been approached with, cause I don't know who else is interested. Maybe one I know who's interested, but the rest, if there's anybody else who's interested, I don't know who he is. And I don't wanna make a decision or a motion or a recommendation or anything, just on what I know. I want to know what else is known, or who else. But at the same time, I don't want this to drag out. I mean, I would be fine now, if I knew how to handle that, but I don't want it to drag out and become a campaign.
I'm making a motion to James Parker.
For who?
James Parker,
And who was that individual?
who stays on Main Street, on the left, he's on the planning board.
Where does he live?
Main Street.
I know. There's Watts County.
300 block, yeah, the 300 block, Main Street.
He's up in here and lives in White House on her name, Christopher Cousins.
Story. Motion's on the floor for Mr. James Parker. Is the motion second? Motion is not seconded. Motion is
I'm making a motion for Julia Mason. She served on the board before, she knows what's going on. She stays here in town.
Commissioner Johnson has made a motion for, Ms. Judy Mason. Is the motion second? Motion is not seconded, motion is defeated. Any additional candidates that wish to be recognized by the board?
Can we revisit this a week from today with the two names that they've got and then anybody else that may be interested?
Any candidate is still eligible.
Yeah. I think that's your decision, not, yeah, yes, I'm here, if you, I'll be here to take my role, but.
April 8th, that's a week from today, and that way we can know exactly who's interested, because we've got two people interested here. And I've been approached, Jody says she's been approached. So that way we can, if we have all of those names, how would we go about that?
I just don't know if I'll be able to attend on that day.
Okay.
When are you available?
Can you try to ask a question?
No, ma'am.
I guess it just depends on when during the day, if you're talking about the same time as the regular meeting, or.
When would you be available?
Yeah. I don't have my calendar, all in front of me. If you're looking at about a week from now, I could do it on Tuesday or Wednesday,
What date is that?
9th or 10th.
The night,
9th or 10th?
okay.
Then why don't I make, if I may make a suggestion, then obviously we can table, let's, make a motion to table this matter, and then we call a special meeting for either the 9th or the 10th when council is available, and we can, obviously, during that period, we can bring forth, those that are interested in other additional, candidates. Is there a motion on the, would there be a motion on the floor for that?
I make a motion that we table it until the ninth.
Is the motion second?
What time?
Is 6 good for you?
I could do 6.
Okay.
Is the motion second? All in favor by saying aye? All opposed? Everyone moving on afterwards. Motion carries. Moving on to, budget amendments, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Chair recognizes Mr. Ralph Clark, interim town manager.
Okay, we presented to you, we're trying to answer the auditor's concerns. This is one of the things that we've gone through, Mr. Overton, myself, and we've gone through the budget and tried to get numbers in line and more, giving you more of a feel of where you stand today, in addition to, if there are budget line items that were going to be short before the year's over, we try to make an amendment for those things, and we've done this for all 3 funds. So you can approve, or you can consider each one individually, or all, well, actually 4, because you got a capital project fund in there as well. The capital projects fund is one I've discussed with the utilities, Public Works and Utilities Committee, and it's improvements to the electric system. It incorporates the replacement of poles and addition to some line work that's badly needed. Tom has reviewed this, and he and Mike Taylor, who's been engineering off and on for the last 20 years for Luke Common, he did some recommendations back maybe 15 years ago. I forget exactly how long ago. But we've kind of cleaned up some of those things to make our system operate better, in addition to getting the poles replaced, and also identifying the pole attachments, or the attachments being cable TV and telephone. Typically, they share in the cost of these poles, and you don't get any share. You do, Green Light, you do have an agreement with them, but other than that, that's the only person's paying, who's gonna be paying anything. And it's unfair to the town to allow, telephone company or Spectrum, I believe it is, your TV provider, to do this, to attach to your poles and not pay some kind of fee for the upkeep of the pole and the right of way. This is pretty typical fees, and it's hard to say what you'll end up getting, but you've got $5 per pole on the Green Light, but I think that with Spectrum and based on what my past has been, you might get, you get a little more. With telephone companies, typically, the telephone companies have been on a pole sharing agreement with most communities, but since landlines are becoming pretty scarce, they don't like to share as much anymore, but they still need to pay their share. They still need to, they've hung on those poles all these years. And if you approve this, I am gonna ask, because of the fact that, the pole, inventory, and that incorporates, a whole, menu of items that, we will do. You know, one, we'll identify the size and class of the pole, the condition of the pole, the birth date of the pole, who the users are, the transformer sizes and street lights, area lights, there are places on the pole that the different utilities have space for, and those are based on safety requirements. They will identify all that, and they will assist us in developing a pole attachment agreement. Now, whether that's one that we will end up using or not, I don't know, but I will ask you to approve a not to exceed contract with Osmos Utility Services if you approve this budget. I can't ask you to do that because I'm violating the same thing she just told you about. So I want to be sure that I get the capital projects fund approved before. So I offer you budget amendment 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you can do it one at a time or do them all three. And I'm happy to, Mr. Overton's here and I'm here, so we can happy to answer any questions you may have.
What are the reasons for the budget on this?
Matters open up for discussion. The chair recognizes Mr. Irvin.
Okay. Couple of the major things in the budget amendment, other than the capital project ordinance, we added money to the audit fee because we want to try to go ahead and get the next 2 years' audits done. So instead of waiting to budget that next year, we'll try to get as much, at least one more year, maybe 2 done. So that's why we increased that. The other increases in salaries came from the fact y'all had a lot of turnover. You had several employees left. You had to replace them with new employees. The new employee's salary is higher than they were, and also we added one additional employee. So we had to increase the salary and benefit budget in several places. We decreased the budget in the electric fund for purchase of electricity. As you know, LP gas prices spiked last year, and cost of electricity went way up. We'll come back down a little bit this year, and we use that to cover some of the other expenses in the electric fund. And then the big amendment is a transfer from the electric fund to fund the capital project fund. Now, it's $300 and some thousand, but we don't have, this capital project fund will probably be spread over a couple of years, won't it?
Yeah, it'll probably be 2 to 3 years, probably.
We'll go ahead and do the budget amendment, but you probably won't have to transfer all of that money this year. You maybe just some, and then we'll re-budget whatever we need to do next year.
Well, actually, we won't re-budget because of the fact that we're putting it into the capital.
I mean, the transfer from the electric fund has to be re-budgeted. That's an annual budget. Okay.
Yeah.
But the capital project budget is good from the start to the finish of the project. But that's the reason for some of the big ones, the salaries and a few other line items.
But anyway, that's my recommendation, that we make these adjustments, one, to get in compliance with the statute, and also just to get a better handle of what our budget looks like through the first 3 quarters. So we, when we start preparing the next budget, with 24, 25, we will at least have some decent numbers to work with.
Council, I just have one question, I just wanna make sure, with this being a project ordinance, does this have to go before planning board or?
This is-
Planning?
No, purely,
No.
purely budgetary.
It's all budgetary, yes, this is yours.
Okay, good, good. Is there a motion on the floor for, to implement, this project and, Mr. Clark's recommendations?
I make a motion that we accept Mr. Clark's recommendations.
Is the motion second? Second. Second by Mr. Johnson. Very well, all in favor by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Very well.
Okay, I have one additional, because I said if you approve the capital projects budget, I have been in contact with Osmos Utility Services, who is a pole inventory services company. And we have estimated, we don't have a count on how many poles, but we've estimated we have 850 poles to be inspected and everything. And they've given me a not to exceed price per pole of $25 per pole for the complete inspection. That's cheap. We were able to tie this on to the city of Wilson's. They have an existing contract with the city of Wilson, and they were able to tie this in if we can get it approved, so that they can start, and they will start May 1st. And to give you a basis of what I'm talking about, we did some preliminary estimates with a couple companies, and if they came in here just to do our little small system, it could get up to $60 a pole. You're just getting them to mobilize and getting them in here to do it. So this is the prices are based on Electricity's does a statewide contract of a sort, and they negotiate for all of us, and they are able to price these things, some on the scale of the project, but it helps us reduce our cost tremendously. So I am asking you now to allow me to enter into an agreement with Osmos Utility Services not to exceed per pole price of $25, and our estimated total poles is 850. If you want to know a total on that, it's $21,250.
I'll make a motion on what you just said.
Thank you, sir.
I second.
Well, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on. Town Administrator's report. Mr. Clark, was that your Town Administrator report or?
No, that was my budget items. Look, you can't get by that easy. You keep me here and I don't have to drive home in the dark. I might as well be a little darker. Yeah.
Chair recognizes Mr. Clark for Administrator's report.
We talked earlier, and the audits we talked about, we are beginning to start the budget prep. We will start this month, and hopefully we will be well on our way before the end of the month. And it is critical, as you pointed out, I've never experienced a town that didn't adopt a budget before June 30th. That's a pretty critical era to get made, and typically, if I understand the statutes correctly, you're not even allowed to operate on July 1st if you don't have an approved budget.
Yeah, so the interim budget.
Yeah, or either, if you don't even adopt either one, you're not able to open the door. You can't generate any charges. But anyway, I want you to start thinking about this, and some of the things that Dana talked about in her presentation to you on the audit, we plan to address in some form or another in the next year's budget. And one of them, we've talked about an additional employee to create the segregation of duties, but also we've got some things that we're currently farming out. Mr. Overton, we farm out right much work with him. He's been working with us to help bring some of that back in-house. We're farming out payroll. We'd like to think we can bring that back in-house is an example. And adding an additional employee, one of the reasons that we need that is the fact that, one, to contribute to segregation of duties, but also to free up some time, because you have 6 grants, grants and loans, that once your audits are caught up, these things are gonna become active. And, someone is on our side is gonna have to administer those. And it's pretty serious if you let these things just kind of float around and they don't get the attention they deserve, because 2 years later, after the grant project is finished, they probably will come and do an audit of you, and you wanna be sure your things are in order. You don't wanna pay back any money. So I'm talking about that, I talk about, and I know she didn't mention water and sewer, but it has been mentioned, we run a water and sewer system with one employee, and it's very difficult to run a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation with one person. You put a lot of strain on that individual and on his body and his family to do this, and I'm recommending we at least try to find another certified operator to provide some relief, but also just to give some crew that he has a little something to do with. We've got one employee that's retiring at the end of December. That's a key employee, and I'm thinking that we probably would want to at least have a few months of a new employee to fill in there to do that. With the electric, the capital project fund, some of the pieces were segregated out, and Tom has said, we can do this. Well, you start trying to do with a 3-man crew, it's hard to get a lot of work accomplished, in addition to doing the other things you do, and I'm gonna talk with him about, getting an additional employee to supplement some of his things. I know there's been some talk here about a cleaning service, for the community center. Well, you ought to look at your own building. I mean, this building, you can't pay me $50 an hour to run a damn, a vacuum cleaner. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And, it's one of those things, you're paying, and it is taking away when some of all your help here ends up being a custodian, and the people that specialize in it, they're a lot better than we are. And today we have, Jimmy talked about earlier about the auditor services, and today it's all, his services and the auditor services are all combined into one number. We need to segregate those numbers or separate them. Jimmy doesn't talk much about it, but his goal is to retire not many years down there, and I mean not many, but just more than maybe a couple. And you heard the auditor say we still need someone with his expertise, but not as full as we've had him.
Once we caught up, we need many hours.
Yeah, we see that, one with the assistance he's given Dana, Dita, I got Dinas and Danas and everything, to get these things done and done properly. We don't need him near as much. So I'm recommended cutting some of those down. The Wake County Sheriff's contract, we still in some discussion, but we don't know exactly. And I'm going to be meeting with the Public Safety Committee, very shortly, and trying to determine how we approach this. That's an issue we have to deal with.
Water rates.
Well, water rates already, they're coming because of the fact that they're part of these AIA contracts, that a rate study for both are in those two contracts. And those contracts, I think you just sign them or they lay it in here for you to sign.
I believe, but I'd have to clarify with Ms. Owens on that issue.
Yeah, but
I believe there was some.
There's a stack in there, and I think there's an AIA, that project's getting ready to get started. And I think that, in addition to the fact that the cost of living raises for the employees for the upcoming year, I'm seeing some numbers across the state of 3% to 5%, and I don't know what your thoughts are, but I see that if you seem to have a very solid employee base, and you're very fortunate because of the fact that there are people out here with stealing in a heartbeat, and you need to be sure we take care of them. I tell people that sometimes it's money, and sometimes it's other things, and I think in today's world with inflation and everything, how they're all getting hit, we need to be sure we take care of them. But anyway, that's what I see on the budget, and as we talked about, we've tried to address the things she talked to you about tonight, and we hopefully will have all these things, so when we do get clear, we don't have to go back and continue to explain why we are or who we are. The next item item I have is, your town manager applicants. I've got, received 7 so far. I plan to start sharing these with you as a group. I'm compiling them in a list, and as I get them and try to get what I think we're gonna get. And I stated in the application, in the advertisement, that we would start reviewing mid-April. So I'm doing that. A little update on the pole replacement. Tom gave me, in February, we replaced 17. In March, we did 13, which is a total of 30. And we've got somewhere we estimating is 250 that we're gonna replace. So, we've accepted this, we'll develop a plan as to how to get it all done and get it done in an orderly manner and, without, having anything falling down on us. And as I said, the AI contracts, that you approved last month are getting started, and that will include a water and sewer rate study. And we will be reviewing the electric rate schedules as well.
Has Tom given you any projected timeline of when those poles will be completed?
Oh, yeah, you do the math, our goal is to do 10 a month. And so you're talking about 30 months, or, no, 20 months. So, a couple of years. But some of the capital projects that we identified in there will actually take care of some of them. So it's hard to tell exactly what the timeline will be, but, we think that in probably a couple of years, we'll have all these things done. I'd like to think that I'll come back in 6 weeks with prices on the other parts of it to get that work started as well. That's it.
Town administrator's report is complete. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very well, all in favor by saying aye.